Book 1, Chapter 4, Part 1 of Armadale. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Alan Winterowd. Armadale by Wilkie Collins. Chapter 4, The Shadow of the Past. One stepping back under the dark shelter of the bulwark, and one standing out boldly in the yellow light of the moon, the two friends turned face to face on the deck of the timber ship, and looked at each other in silence. The next moment, Allan's inveterate recklessness seized on the grotesque side of the situation by main force. He seated himself astride on the bulwark, and burst out boisterously into his loudest and heartiest laugh. "All my fault," he said, "but there's no help for it now. Here we are, hard and fast in a trap of our own setting, and there goes the last of the doctor's boat. Come out of the dark, Midwinter. I can't half see you there, and I want to know what's to be done next." Midwinter neither answered nor moved. Allan left the bulwark, and, mounting the forecastle, looked down attentively at the waters of the Sound. "One thing is pretty certain," he said. "With the current on that side, and the sunken rocks on this, we can't find our way out of the scrape by swimming, at any rate. So much for the prospect at this end of the wreck. Let's see how things look at the other. Rouse up, messmate!" he called out cheerfully as he passed Midwinter. "Come and see what the old tub of a timber ship has got to show us astern." He sauntered on, with his hands in his pockets, humming the chorus of a comic song. His voice had produced no apparent effect on his friend, but at the light touch of his hand in passing, Midwinter started and moved out slowly from the shadow of the bulwark. "Come along!" cried Allan, suspending his singing for a moment and glancing back. Still without a word of answer, the other followed. Thrice he stopped before he reached the stern end of the wreck. The first time, to throw aside his hat and push back his hair from his forehead and temples. The second time, reeling giddy to hold for a moment by a ring-bolt close at hand. The last time, though Allan was plainly visible a few yards ahead, to look stealthily behind him with the furtive scrutiny of a man who believes that other footsteps are following him in the dark. "Not yet," he whispered to himself, with eyes that searched the empty air. "I shall see him astern, with his hand on the lock of the cabin door." The stern end of the wreck was clear of the ship-breaker's lumber, accumulated in other parts of the vessel. Here the one object that rose visible on the smooth surface of the deck was the low wooden structure which held the cabin door and roofed in the cabin stairs. The wheelhouse had been removed, the binnacle had been removed, but the cabin entrance, and all that belonged to it, had been left untouched. The scuttle was on, and the door was closed. On gaining the after part of the vessel, Allan walked straight to the stern, and looked out to sea over the taffrail. No such thing as a boat was in view anywhere on the quiet, moon-brightened waters. Knowing Midwinter's sight to be better than his own, he called out, "Come up here, and see if there's a fisherman within hail of us." Hearing no reply, he looked back. Midwinter had followed him as far as the cabin and had stopped there. He called again in a louder voice, and beckoned impatiently. Midwinter had heard the call, for he looked up, but still he never stirred from his place. There he stood, as if he had reached the utmost limits of the ship, and could go no further. Allan went back and joined him. It was not easy to discover what he was looking at, for he kept his face turned away from the moonlight, but it seemed as if his eyes were fixed, with a strange expression of inquiry, on the cabin door. "What is there to look at there?" Allan asked. "Let's see if it's locked." As he took a step forward to open the door, Midwinter's hand seized him suddenly by the coat collar and forced him back. The moment after, the hand relaxed without losing its grasp, and trembled violently, like the hand of a man completely unnerved. "Am I to consider myself in custody?" asked Allan, half astonished and half amused. "Why, in the name of wonder, do you keep staring at the cabin door? Any suspicious noises below? It's no use disturbing the rats, if that's what you mean. We haven't got a dog with us. Men? Living men they can't be, for they would have heard us and come on deck. Dead men? Quite impossible. No ship's crew could be drowned in a landlocked place like this unless the vessel broke up under them. And here's the vessel as steady as a church to speak for herself. Man alive, how your hand trembles! What is there to scare you in that rotten old cabin? What are you shaking and shivering about? Any company of the supernatural sort on board? Mercy preserve us, as the old women say. Do you see a ghost? I see two, answered the other, driven headlong into speech and action by a maddening temptation to reveal the truth. Two, he repeated, his breath bursting from him in deep, heavy gasps, as he tried vainly to force back the horrible words. The ghost of a man like you drowning in the cabin, and the ghost of a man like me turning the lock of the door on him. Once more young Armadale's hearty laughter rang out loud and long through the stillness of the night. "Turning the lock of the door, is he?" said Allan, as soon as his merriment left him breath enough to speak. "That's a devilish unhandsome action, Master Midwinter, on the part of your ghost. The least I can do after that is to let mine out of the cabin and give him the run of the ship." With no more than a momentary exertion of his superior strength, he freed himself easily from Midwinter's hold. "Below there!" he called out gaily, as he laid his strong hand on the crazy lock and tore open the cabin door. "Ghost of Allan Armadale, come on deck!" In his terrible ignorance of the truth, he put his head into the doorway and looked down, laughing, at the place where his murdered father had died. "Pah!" he exclaimed, and stepping back suddenly with a shudder of disgust. "The air is foul already, and the cabin is full of water." It was true. The sunken rocks on which the vessel lay wrecked had burst their way through her lower timbers astern, and the water had welled up through the rifted wood. Here, where the deed had been done, the fatal parallel between the past and the present was complete. What the cabin had been in the time of the fathers, that cabin was now in the time of the sons. Allan pushed the door to again with his foot, a little surprised at the sudden silence which appeared to have fallen on his friend from the moment when he had laid his hand on the cabin lock. When he turned to look, the reason of the silence was instantly revealed. Midwinter had dropped on the deck. He lay senseless before the cabin door, his face turned up, white and still to the moonlight, like the face of a dead man. In a moment Allan was at his side. He looked uselessly round the lonely limits of the wreck as he lifted Midwinter's head on his knee, for a chance of help, where all chance was ruthlessly cut off. "What am I to do?" he said to himself, in the first impulse of alarm. Not a drop of water near, but the foul water in the cabin. A sudden recollection crossed his memory. The florid color rushed back over his face, and he drew from his pocket a wicker-covered flask. "God bless the doctor for giving me this before we sailed!" he broke out, fervently, as he poured down Midwinter's throat some drops of the raw whiskey which the flask contained. The stimulant acted instantly on the sensitive system of the swooning man. He sighed faintly and slowly opened his eyes. "Have I been dreaming?" he asked, looking up vacantly in Allan's face. His eyes wandered higher, and encountered the dismantled mass of the wreck rising weird and black against the night sky. He shuddered at the sight of them, and hid his face on Allan's knee. "No dream," he murmured to himself, mournfully. "Oh me, no dream." "You have been overtired all day," said Allan, "and this infernal adventure of ours has upset you. Take some more whiskey; it's sure to do you good. Can you sit by yourself, if I put you against the bulwark so?" "Why by myself? Why do you leave me?" asked Midwinter. Allan pointed to the mizzen shrouds of the wreck, which were still left standing. "You are not well enough to rough it here till the workmen come off in the morning," he said. "We must find our way on shore at once, if we can. I am going up to get a good view all round, and see if there's a house within hail of us." Even in the moment that passed while those few words were spoken, Midwinter's eyes wandered back distrustfully to the fatal cabin door. "Don't go near it," he whispered. "Don't try to open it, for God's sake!" "No, no," returned Allan, humoring him. "When I come down from the rigging I'll come back here." He said